This is the world according to Jen and Carolyn.
Everybody, so we are going to talk about the history of catfishing / could I be catfished?
I think we know the answer to that for me, Jen, and the answer is yes.
Yes, we're going to get into that too. So I think this is going to be on our first show. So full disclosure, we've just been recording. And we're like, we're going to take whatever the best show is and make it our first show so we can hook you guys.
Yeah.
The first one's always free, kids. So this will likely be our first show. We'll see how good it comes out.
We're also perfectionists.
We are big time
Which really just means we're people pleasers.
I think we need to, we've got problems. So we need to get over that shit. So if this is going to, in fact, be our first show, we're going to talk about things. A lot of these things these topics are things that we have personal experience with. Carolyn, my friend, good friend since high school, is she's a clinician by trade. The whole crux of the show, the theme, I suppose you can say, is we're just going to talk about things that matter to us, hopefully things that matter to you and things that you find fascinating. And then because a lot of us walk around like we know something. Carolyn's going to go ahead and jump in with the clinical angle, the actual reasons for why people behave the way we do, in hopes of shedding light on people's sometimes strange and odd behavior. Yeah. Right? There's an explanation for everything.
Yep.
Right? Okay. So today we're going to talk about catfishing. And catfishing, it's really all the rage these days. Yeah. And the internet, you couldn't have catfishing without the internet, right? It provides this level of anonymity that perfectly, lends itself to shady behavior. And the internet giveth and the internet taketh away, God. Right? So we're going to discuss the history of this phenomenon, as well as some popular catfish-themed shows and podcasts that seem to be, again, all the rage right now, right? And Carolyn, as I mentioned, she's going to help us out with the clinical angle. She's going to help us shed some light on why people do messed up shit like this in the first place and why so many of us get victimized and fall for this sort of behavior, these schemes, right? So, Carolyn, what were you going to say?
I was just saying also, as we mock and joke, I really, truly believe more than ever, if this is happening to you, I just want to say right now, you're not dumb.
No, you're absolutely not.
You're a normal, healthy human being who believes and hopes and trusts. And again, they're predators.
Yes.
These individuals, whether they're teenagers thinking this is funny, I would equate it to how we kind of did prank calls maybe when we were kids, and it was sort of
more
funny. But these people are out to hurt you and manipulate you. And if you have been manipulated and hurt, again, you're a victim, hands down. Yeah. So please know that that's 100% our angle predominantly.
We have nothing but empathy, right? And so I remember, Carolyn, the time that you got catfished.
Which time, Jen?
The one time that we know definitively.
We'll get to the other one, though. Don't worry.
We'll jump into that in another episode. So, I had to play Captain Save-A-Ho. You're welcome, by the way. So, Carolyn, why don't you tell us this story? Let's start by telling the story.
Well, when you have to say it's too good to be true, it probably is. And I matched with a guy, I believe this was on Hinge, which if you're not familiar with the dating websites and
which
apps,
I'm not.
Hinge is geared towards women, giving them the, we get to start the conversation, we get to initiate. So if someone matches you and you don't like them, they're not going to contact you. Unlike Tinder or things like that, where anyone could just sort of match and contact you. So I matched with this guy. His name was Henry.
Henry Hill. Yeah. Does that sound familiar to anybody?
Yeah. The first thing I said is, the guy from Goodfellas. He had no idea what I meant. And he, was gorgeous. The pictures all looked like they were taken off his Facebook maybe or Instagram.
But polished.
Yeah. And again, just, that kind of handsome. We were like, I can't believe this guy's on here. Like, he's really, like, I can't believe I could date this guy. He's really, really good looking. And so we match. A couple odd things right off the bat. Not so much odd, just very, very unusual. Tells me his job is a Union Pacific Railroad conductor.
Which actually isn't odd. I know one, but Carolyn just isn't familiar with the world of railroad employment.
Who do you know that does railroading?
My buddy Mario.
Really?
Yeah.
He works on a railroad?
Yes.
Cool.
He is a conductor.
Well, I didn't know this. And so of course my questions are like, isn't that shit electric now? What are you shoveling coal in in an engine?
Driving that train. On cocaine.
Is he wearing like Oshkosh overalls? I was so confused. I had no idea this was a thing. And so he said he was born in, I think it was like North or South, one of the Carolinas, was adopted. Was in the foster care system till he was 18. It was very much like a sob story. And that also explained there was a girl in one of his pictures that he was adamant about telling me, like, that's like my sister, but like we grew up in the foster system. Like, she's very important to me. And I'm
playing
sitting
on your emotions.
Playing on my emotions. Yeah. Tells me he has a dog, even a couple times, like on a phone call, like was like walking his dog, apparently.
Likely
This
story.
only lasted a couple days because as I told Jen these things, she was, again, questioning. There were a lot of just inconsistencies in his story that just kind of like say he was going to get a haircut and that's why we couldn't meet. But then the next day I'd ask, like, text him, like, how was your haircut? And he'd be like, wait, what? Oh yeah, my haircut.
Just smoked a lot of weed.
We talked on the phone. He sounded young to me, but we had a nice conversation. Yeah. And then we were supposed to meet up, and that morning,
meet up on FaceTime.
We're FaceTime or go out.
Okay.
Like one of the two.
Got it.
I don't remember which one, but he sends me a screenshot, or he sends me a screenshot of him that morning drinking a beer on his deck.
Red flag, don't drink beer in the morning.
I didn't even think about that. I looked at his nails in the photo and I was like, they don't have any soot on them. But it was just one of those pictures where it was too perfect. Yeah. So my dumbass is like, look how hot he is, Jen. Oh my God, he's so sexy. And Jen, go from there.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I've never done a reverse image lookup or whatever. And I was like, but I think we should do it. So I like quickly taught myself how to do it. And this guy, he really went deep on these images. I had to go to not one, but two gay Pinterest pages to find these images. It was like hot twinks with beards. Some shit like that. But yeah, I found it. This was from years ago, by the way. But mind you, the picture he said he took that morning was on these Pinterest pages from like 2019, right? Yeah. And so I sent it back to Carolyn. I was like, oh, look what I found. I felt that, of course, but also I was like, don't say anything. I was like, let's see how he plays this. I want to see where he goes from here, because clearly this is not him. Mm-hmm. Likely is not him. Mm-hmm. Carolyn has like zero patience.
I really didn't.
Yeah, I was like, you need to just wait. I want to see what this guy does. I want to see if he's doing this for financial gain. Like, is he a Nigerian prince? like what's the deal? Yeah. And so she couldn't wait, and she texted him what I had found and was like, how do you explain this? And then all of a sudden he disappeared man. Like, his dating profile was gone. Like, all his other bullshit stuff was gone.
Well, and I actually think it's a real person's photo. Some of the pictures were. Yeah. I do think that name, because when I went on Facebook, there was a Henry Hill, but it's fake. And I mean, this is what was the weird thing, and again, I consider myself a pretty rational, smart person. I'm smart. I couldn't believe it. Yeah. I was like, but I talked to someone, like, what? It was so beyond me that this could happen to me. And I was like, well, but maybe there was a mistake. Like maybe and it was bizarre. I couldn't believe that my mind was so confused. Yeah. And then you also feel sad. Right. And you feel, and also I was like, oh man, he was hot.
Well, it's disappointing.
It was massively, but then I got angry.
Yeah. And you should be angry because that's bullshit. Yeah. And this catfishing, granted, like, what we call catfishing, this modern iteration, yeah, it's relatively new, right? But the concept of deception for personal or financial gain, that goes back a long time. And so let's start with the history here. So there was an OG catfish who this guy used personal ads in the newspapers. This was in, I think, the 30s and the 40s.
Wow.
And he used newspaper ads, the Lonely Hearts Club column. And so he was dubbed the Lonely Hearts Club Killer.
Yeah.
And so he would post these ads in the personals, and he would, initially it started as duping women for money, right? And then it turned into murder. And there was
crazy.
It's crazy. And there was a woman that he met, this woman named Martha Beck. This guy's name was Raymond Martinez Fernandez. And Martha Beck, I think, was supposed to be a target. And something about this bitch, look at her picture. I don't know what it is, but something about her, he was like, oh yeah, this is the one.
Yeah.
And so she became a partner in crime as opposed to a mark. And these two sick assholes, they made a career out of duping and murdering women who posted ads for companionship. A lot of these women had lost their husbands. And, you know, this was back in the 30s and the 40s. And so their shtick was Raymond would be like, oh, I'm the one that's looking for a wife. And then he'd be like, oh, this is my sister. And he'd bring Martha along. And so these women were trusting, right?
Creates comfort.
Back in the day, you couldn't just show up and take a woman on the date or like show up at her house. That was, the neighbors would talk.
Yeah.
But if you're showing up with your sister, it's far more socially
She's like the
acceptable.
chaperone.
Yeah, chaperoning, right? And so, you know, then they killed people and they take their money. They even killed a baby because one of the women had a baby. Terrible. You kill a baby in my book, fucking dead.
Yeah.
So they're terrible, terrible people. But I think of them when I think of like OG catfishing, right?
Yeah.
And so, but catfishing as we know it, as I mentioned, it's a concept that really, it can't exist without the internet. And, you know, I can wrap my head around why people do this for financial gain. It's still fucked up, but at least that makes sense, right? But what about the people who catfish for fun or some sort of like emotional gratification? Who knows? And so this kind of brings us to the history of modern catfishing. And I think about the documentary Catfish that premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in 2010 as being like the origin of all of this, right?
You gotta watch it.
It's so good.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, watch it.
Yeah.
Because catfish, the term catfish and the concept of catfishing, it's a part of our lexicon.
Yeah.
But it's so funny because I'll talk to people and they'll be like, that show on MTV. I'm like, no, the show came after.
Yes.
Yes, it's the same guy, Nev. But he had a documentary first and foremost, and he got catfished. So you need to see it. So if you haven't seen it, it's riveting. And I think it pretty much is the origin of modern catfishing. And so this documentary, it starts when this photographer from New York, his name's Nev Schulman, he was hit up on MySpace. Who remembers MySpace? I do. We are old. Got hit up on MySpace by an 8-year-old girl who represented herself as an artist living in Michigan. And she asked Schulman if she could paint one of his photos because he was a photographer. And he said, sure. And what she supposedly painted was hella dope. And I'm glossing over a lot here. I don't want to go into too much detail.
Watch the documentary.
Just watch the damn thing.
Yeah.
But Schulman starts filming what he thinks is going to be a cute documentary highlighting what he thinks is a little girl's burgeoning art career. It sounds super cute and innocent. Kind of. I mean, it
kind of sounds creepy to me.
I know.
Her burgeoning or her virgining?
No, that comes later.
Oh, okay.
And it's not a child, so it's okay. It's still not okay. Anyway. I'm like, back up. How do I back out of this? So we don't get canceled. God damn it. But yeah, I mean, a kid hits me up on social media and I'm like, peace, where are your parents? Bye.
Yeah,
I'm not blocking you now.
Yeah.
But
he supported the arts.
Right.
And the youth.
He thinks it's okay because there's also a quote unquote mother figure involved. And so he's like, I'm talking about the mom and the child. So he thinks it's okay. So he ends up falling for a young woman named Megan. She says she's the little girl, the artist's half-sister. And from there, this elaborate online and phone call based catfishing scheme romance ensues. And so this is creepy. This kind of falls into what you were saying. Nev, I love you, but come on, man. I'm sure he looks back on this and cringes as well. He's a reflective, smart guy. But of this woman, Megan, he says she was smoking hot, unbelievably sexy, super beautiful. That's not cringy.
Well, because that's what you should really factor in when you're going to date someone long term. It's just their looks, right?
Well, looks are important, but what he goes on to say is this person, Megan, is supposedly a songwriter and has incredible talent. And so she starts sending him songs that she supposedly wrote and performed. And so of that, he says, I would listen and, I would melt. Here's this girl, this beautiful girl, virgin girl in Michigan who's writing the passionate love song. So that in and of itself is creepy. I'm not going to go into this concept of putting virginity when it comes to women on a pedestal. That's creepy. But anyway, Nev, I forgive you, maybe.
Yeah.
As long as you see the error of your ways. And so apparently Megan, super talented musician, but Schulman, this is what good friends do. His friends got suspicious.
Good.
And so they started doing their research and they started digging around and they found stolen lyrics, straight up stolen whole ass songs that were ripped off that this chick Megan was passing off as her own. And so they told him, Schulman himself got suspicious, and it all comes to a head when Schulman and his crew, they traveled to Michigan to meet Megan. And instead of Megan, Schulman and his team find a 39-year-old woman named Angela at the address. And Angela is actually Abby, the little girl, the artist's real life mom. But she's not, spoiler alert, she's actually not an artist. And Megan, the half sister, is actually totally made up. That's Angela's alter ego, whatever you want to call it. And, Angela invented everything from fake people complete with voices on social media to this whole ass, fake daughters, art prowess, etc. What would compel somebody to do something like that? I don't know. But
sad.
It's sad. When you watch the documentary, it is sad.
Yes.
This woman, Angela, she has a husband and a daughter and two severely developmentally disabled twin stepsons. And, since the documentary came out, Angela claims to have been diagnosed with schizophrenia. I don't know if any of that's true. She's also lied about having cancer. It's hard to know where the lies stop and the truth begins with folks like this, right?
She's definitely dealing with some mental health stuff, though. Clearly.
Very clearly. Yeah. She's not doing this for financial gain.
So that's always what's fascinating to me. Like financial gain, I can at least sort of wrap my head around. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really clear cut. But, her life seemed boring and sad. But I don't know if she was trying to fill some kind of void. I don't know. But Carolyn, you can probably enlighten us on why people would fall for this shit. And more importantly, why do people do this kind of stuff?
I mean, God, I wish my life was so boring that, I can't even maintain regular relationships and keep things straight. I think that's a great question. I think, again, there's a spectrum, I would say, of catfishing where on one hand, there are people who are, like the Nigerian scams or like things like that, where you are trying to solicit money. Yeah. That is the game. You're manipulating to get money. We see this with elderly people, but you're still preying, but you're manipulating and you're what I would call kind of shape shifting, which is a term. If I'm hanging out with a bunch of people who like cars and I up the ante of the knowledge or I fake knowledge about cars, I'm fitting it.
You're a chameleon.
I'm a chameleon. Yeah, there you go. Shape-shifting chameleon.
Yeah.
Chameleon.
That's my chair, not my butt. I promise. Not this time. We're too early in our relationship, folks. Maybe later.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
So I do think there, on one hand, that's one thing. I think also there are people like this Angela woman who's extremely sad, isolated. For most of us, our computer's a source of, I use it for work. I might try and see which one of my friends is married or what their kids are doing or something, but I don't really spend all day long on it. And I really think there are people, that's their livelihood. That's their social connection. And so it probably starts really innocently. And I think even on that Catfish show that's been on MTV, most of the time, it's you either see people who are fucking assholes and sociopathic and they are just trying to fuck with you because they think it's funny and it's fun and that is sick and immature. And I think that I have a hard time wrapping my head around it, but in the same way that I would have a hard time wrapping my head around someone murdering someone. Like, why would you want to do that?
Yeah.
Why would you, hunt someone? But people do. It happens. I don't. You don't, but I'm sure people do. And so, same thing. It's with catfishing. There is that end of it too. And then there's kind of the middle ground where people are just lonely, or they want to belong, or they want to feel like they, maybe they are embarrassed about their body or they're embarrassed about something. And so they want to, connect. But at the end of the day, I think most of these people I hate to say the word predator now, because again, with that other side of someone who's probably dealing with trauma and doesn't know or social anxiety. But again, it's still, I don't know. It's not okay.
It's still duplicitous.
It's duplicitous and you're hurting people.
That's it. That's the thing. It's like, we can understand why you're doing something, but it doesn't make what you're doing okay.
Yes. Well, and coming from experience, that was the saddest part, where I think I even said to you, like, I've been rejected on a date. Now I'm getting rejected by someone who isn't really real. And there was just this layer of like, ugh, that feels so awful. Yeah. So, I would say they're bored or they're mean, they're lonely, they're struggling. But we can spend hours trying to guess on why other people do what we do. Yeah. They do. But I think ultimately what I really took from this is I want to understand why I fell for this.
Yeah.
I want to understand why it was okay with me that I didn't go out and meet someone, which is normally my boundary. It's like, oh, you connect with me on an app. We maybe talk back and forth a little bit. If the conversation is good and I feel okay, I will pick a public place. We'll go get coffee or we'll go get a drink. Yeah. And if that goes well, the next step is for me to say, hey, let's go on a date, or give them my number. Yeah. But I have to have that, 360 sensory experience, which is important. And so I think it's really what I want to take from this, or what I took from this, and what I hope our listeners will take from this, is we got to stop figuring out why fucked up people do fucked up shit, and figure out what is going on with me. Yes. That I dropped a boundary that I kind of knew I had a weird feeling about.
That makes sense. We can't control other people, but we can control our behavior and our response to things.
And, really what this was, if I really boil it down, it was an ego boost. This is someone incredibly hot. And I think that's often what they use. You're not catfishing with a mediocre person. They look perfect. And you start feeling that ego drive of like, ooh, this is interesting. Yeah. And again, as I said, it's fascinating, but we have to look deep into the truth of ourselves. And that's what's empowering. And going, a friend of mine put this really well, where if I lose my keys, and I think, oh God, I'm losing my mind. Well, no, I'm not, because I didn't make an intentional thought to say, hey, I'm putting my keys here.
Which friend told you that? Me, bitch.
Was that you?
That was me last week, son.
Wait, I thought that was Megan.
No, bitch, that was me.
Damn, I'm losing it. All right, well, see how highly I speak of you?
Yes.
Wait, so Jen, you say it then.
No, what I heard, I don't know if
I'm so
a TED
dumb.
Talk or whatever, but it was, people, especially as we age, we often worry about our cognitive ability, our memories. We're like, oh shit, I lost my keys. I don't remember where I put them. But this article that I read, or this TED Talk that I listened to, of course I can't cite my source, the person was like, no, you actually never made a conscious attempt to be like, I am putting my keys here, therefore I will remember it. You're just like, there's a lot of stuff going on. You're absentmindedly throwing your keys wherever. And so it's not indicative of something being wrong with your brain that you can't remember if you're not going, I'm going to make a conscious, I'm going to make a memory or whatever.
Well, and the conscious choice that I make when I choose to put myself out there on online dating or go out on a date at any point in time, my long-term goal is to find a relationship. Is to find a partner. That's fine. Sometimes it's to have a one-night stand. Sometimes it's just to meet people. But what happens is that, again, in a nutshell, the lens that we start looking at this person, and I think some people are, again, on a spectrum with this. I am a recovering codependent and in process all the time. But, when I'm listening to this person, I'm building a fantasy. And my fantasy is ultimately to have this wonderful relationship and a partner and someone to share a life and someone to do things. And so people know that, and they start, your brain starts filling in the blanks. Right. So where maybe, and I'll be really honest, as he's telling me these things, I'm thinking, oh, that's a good job. Oh, you like outdoors. Oh, you have a dog. And I'm superimposing those qualities. They're not characteristics. That's not having a dog and going for a walk. That's not a philosophy. That's not a value. That's something, that's a behavior. Right. How on earth was I taking that and making it mean we're a match? That's cuckoo when I think of it in my mind.
Not, though, because they're things that you like. Well, they're things you value. You're like, I love dogs. I love the outdoors. I love a man with a job.
Well, but it reminds me of like my second grade self going, oh, I like this boy, Craig. His name starts with the letter C. Our birthdays are both in July. Like these similarities. And that is what these individuals are counting on oftentimes is they're, especially with women, because we're pretty simple. I don't know if your husband would agree with that.
I mean, I think sociologically programmed many of us to want these things. And even those of us who, consider ourselves to be feminists and, we don't want exclusively the domestic life. Like we still have been programmed to, I want marriage. I want children. Like, and
as humans, we want companionship. We want to belong.
And that's more basic.
So you have that ego, you have that ego self kind of feeling flooded with positivity that this person's usually telling you have a great smile, you're very beautiful. And I'm in my head, I'm like, I know. It's still nice to hear. It's like I've invested a good amount of money into that. Thank you, sir. Yes. But then we also have boundaries. Things that we tell ourselves we'll do or not do, and then knowingly kind of break a boundary. Like it was very odd to me to talk to someone when we live in the same city. I was like, why don't we just go meet up? Like that felt weird to me, but I thought, oh, well, he maybe doesn't want to do that. And it's not all about you, Carolyn. Fuck that shit. It's always all about me. Attachment. I could go into such depth with that, but again, that's that sense of belonging, feeling seen, heard, and valued. So, when you're single, you're not often getting that. You might be getting that from your friends, but I'll be honest, there's a certain amount of hubris I get when a man does that for me. It feels really good. But it's also this idea that, I'm looking for what are called the 3 pillars of a good relationship. Connection. I want to be attracted to you. I want to be able to trust you, say what you do what you say what you mean. And I want to admire you. That's admiration is ultimately what begins the process of love. Respect. I respect you. But honestly, Jen, it's all about them hormones and those neurochemicals. Again, all of this other stuff is higher brain function. At the end of the day, it is a physiological drive that when you are attracted to someone, your brain goes, ooh, that's a partner. That's how we're going to be safe. That's how we're going to procreate. That makes sense. My normal brain is going, you're professional. You can pay for yourself. You have your own apartment. Like you can get around. You don't need this person. I want this person. Right. Just like I don't need to eat a whole Duncan Hines cake, but I fucking wanna.
Yep, that's right. There's some sort of like biological imperative that's associated with this want, this drive, this desire.
And you can't control that. I mean, well, let me.
You can, but it's it's more challenging.
It's not like I can say dopamine stop happening, but you can be more aware that this is dopamine, oxytocin flooding you with love toxins.
Yeah.
And this is why it's really important to pace yourself and go slow and go, what's the rush?
Yes.
Let me think this through.
Right.
The big thing I want to talk about is limerence. This concept of, and this is what these hormones and these neurotransmitters do, and they're not really hormones, they're neurotransmitters, but they do this to us. The dopamine, the vasopressin, the oxytocin, they're bonding, they create connection.
Yeah, that's what happens when I have a child.
Absolutely. And that's a good thing. You want to have that. But people are preying on that. And they're using that against you. And limerence is this actual state of mind. Yeah. And it results from, doesn't have to be, it could be romantic or non-romantic feelings. You know how sometimes you'll meet a friend, you're like, oh my God, I fucking love them. I can't wait to go out with them. They're so cool. And then you're like kind of like love bombing each other. Yeah. But it can lead to obsessive thoughts, intrusive thoughts, and really what we call fantasies, you know, and what we even call healing fantasies. Yeah. A lot of women, myself included, go, well, I have everything. The missing piece is this lovely person to share it with. Right. And this person is going to prey on that and go, ooh, that could be me. I'm going to create that perfect puzzle piece. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, good, my life will be happy. That's not true. That's not real life. Yeah. That's the shit you see.
Give me $5,000.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's the shit we see in social media. That's the shit we see on TV. Right. That's Hollywood.
It's easy to fabricate this falsehood now with the internet.
Oh, absolutely.
The internet just lends itself to this predatory behavior and creating like a false image, you know, and an image and a persona that corresponds with what so many of us want.
Yes.
You know?
Well, and your brain at that moment too is, you know, your brain's not a mathematical computer. It's also constantly shifting and responding and reacting to stimulus around you. Yep. And that's a good thing. But again, what you have to be really careful of is checking that system. Yeah. Because unfortunately, our brains have not evolved as quickly as technology has.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So when I'm looking at someone, I'm seeing them visually. I might hear their voice, and that's also a connection too. But ultimately, I need to meet them and experience their pheromones. I need to experience how they talk with me. So, I mean, I'm great on text, and I sound like an asshole. I'm really perfect. I'm great on text. I'm a great new person. It's true. Date me. But, you know, a lot of people are really great on text, and then I've gone out with them. I'm like, you're a dud. You can't keep a conversation going. But the longer you prolong that, the worse off you are. Yep. Because you will literally start falling in love with a person that you don't even know if they're real.
That's right. And we see this so often. Now, let me tell you about this podcast I listened to recently, and it really corresponds with everything that you just discussed. And so I want you to listen to this. It's called Sweet Bobby. I highly recommend it. But this is a catfish scheme that lasted for a decade. 10 years. Wow. 10 years. And, you know, I'm not going to go into too much detail. Look it up. I don't remember if I listened to it on Spotify or if it was on the Apple podcast or whatever the shit. I should know this since we're like putting our podcast up. But, I will link it in the show notes.
We have show notes.
Yeah, we have show notes. Look at us. Professional. So not too much detail. This one takes place in England. I love some British shit.
Was it in the Cotswolds?
No, just not a period piece, because fuck a period piece. No, not Downton Abbey.
Oh, I love that.
You're so lame.
I know.
Anyway, there was a woman named Kirat, and she has what I kind of hesitate to call it a relationship, but it was a relationship with someone she'd never met. It's a dude named Bobby who's like loosely connected to her family through her little cousin, this woman named Simran. Anyway, you know, Kirat develops this online relationship or online friendship with Bobby and falls for some bullshit about him being shot, dying, like not really being dead, but, you know, being in witness protection. And I don't think Bobby ever necessarily gives a reason as to why he's in witness protection. I'm telling you to listen to this, but I'm going to ruin it for you. So I'm letting you know there's a spoiler alert. So if you want to listen to this shit, you should skip 5 minutes ahead because I'm long-winded as hell. So, thus begins years of medical emergencies, near-death experiences, a bunch of fake-ass people based on real people, I think, who corroborate Bobby's fantastical bullshit stories. This is the Sikh or the Sikh community, and so they're a very tightly knit.
I don't
community.
know what that is.
It's a religion.
Okay.
I think Indian folks specifically are of this this religion, Sikhs. So really, I know nothing about this. I'm trying to be respectful. Let me know.
I'll look it up. I'll look it up.
Tell me more, folks. So, she starts having a relationship with this person. There's all these bullshit stories and coercive behavior and controlling texts and phone calls from Bobby. And, phone calls where this dude Bobby whispers to Kirat because of course he had an operation following one of his many strokes and it damaged his vocal cords. So he has to whisper. Of course. Totally believable, right? Yeah. And so, again, I feel nothing but sympathy for Kirat, but I wouldn't. I just know me.
Yeah.
But anyway, after 10 years.
That's a lot.
10 years of this dude, Bobby, flaking on meeting Kirat in person at the last minute. Several meetings scheduled, and Bobby going, I can't do this, and then just disappearing. Kirat finally, I think towards the end, hires a private detective and gets an address for Bobby. So she shows up unannounced. She finds the real Bobby, who's a dude who has no idea that any of this is going on and that his image is being used to perpetrate this fucking decade-long lie. This guy has a wife. He has a small child. Fast forward, if you don't want to hear this is the part where I'm going to ruin it all. But this dude has no idea who Kirat is. And it turns out that Kirat's own cousin, Simran, who quasi-dated Bobby's little brother a decade ago, she was behind the entire hoax.
Wow.
I thought my family was messed up. This is unbelievably messed up. And poor Kirat never gets an answer from Simran.
That's the worst part.
As to why she did this. And, throughout the podcast, Simran and the producer, they are emphatic about how this could happen to anyone. And while I totally understand someone could get catfish, I honestly don't think I could fall for it. 10
years is a lot. I couldn't take it. I mean, and that was the thing where it's if we hadn't met within a day or two, within the week for sure,
right,
it would be a red flag to me of well, how are we ever going to actually date if you can't even set up a meet?
Totally.
But I don't know. I know people though, Jen, who this works for them. I don't know about 10 years, but they're sort of okay with having it be online, or they're having it, and maybe it's even a younger generation too. Yeah. Where they're oh, cool, I can talk to this person and I don't have a lot of time, but we can connect and we can FaceTime. And so I think it's just so fascinating how someone could be, one, so manipulative, but two, I would love to talk to Kirat.
Yeah.
And just be where were your friends, girl? Yeah. Where were your friends? Right. If I told you I was talking to someone after a month even and we hadn't met, what would you say to me? Yep. You'd be
I don't understand. Friends, family, the whole deal. Yeah. Why did they let this go on? Why did they not sit her down and have an intervention and say, this isn't normal? No. Right? You recognize that there's something odd about this, right? So my question really is, whether or not we could be duped to this extent, which I think it's rare. 10 years, that's a long time. But is falling for the shit, is it all rooted in this deep-seated desire to be loved?
Oh God. I mean, don't we all? It's, I wish it wasn't, but unless someone can tell me differently, I can only speak for myself. For me, it is.
Yeah.
You know, I think humans have an innate capacity to love more than any, in both directions. We have a very big capacity to love. We have a very big capacity to hate and do fucked up shit.
Yeah.
Where are the two worse? Are people good or people evil? That's a great question, right? You know, but we also, you know, none of this is a bad thing. We shouldn't want to not be loved. We shouldn't want to not find these things, but we have to stop and take a second and go, why?
Yeah.
And what about that? Like, where do I need to check myself? And that's often a step that I don't go to because it bursts the bubble.
Of course.
And hell, maybe I grew up with too much Disney or too much fucking, romantic comedies.
I was raised by a dysfunctional lesbian. So I don't have that problem.
My mom should have read me more Grimm's fairy tales.
There you go.
That would, or more Hans Christian Andersen, like legit shit. But, you know, I think most of us, well, actually, you know, the other thing too is I would never do this. It breaks the realm of reality to me.
Yeah.
That one, this could happen to me too. We often think, you know, as I sit here listening to Carrots, or I'm like, oh, I would never do that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I let it happen for a week.
Yep.
So I can't say that. And so, you know, again, and whenever I watch any of these shows, I sit there and I judge.
Of course.
And I have to really check that and go, well, where in that judgment lies my vulnerability and my capacity to do that?
Yeah.
Because we all have it. And I think that we just want to have that limerence. Those chemicals feel good.
Yes.
That's what they're there for. And they were there for survival and protection
and breeding.
Yeah. And I don't know, the world's scary. I mean, I think of all the people I know during the pandemic who either broke up or bonded fucking quick.
Yeah.
And now it's falling apart because they bonded under that intense amount of pressure. Right. And that's not healthy.
No.
You know, you may be with this person for 50 years.
Yeah.
Take a second.
Yeah.
Step back. Have some needs. Like think about what you need, not just what you want.
Right.
And be aware of these biological imperatives that don't quite fit in with 21st century life or 21st century technology.
Yeah.
Shit can get faked. Shit can be perceived any way we want it to be, and that's what they're preying on.
Right.
And so we have to look at, you know, educate yourself on the neuroscience of your brain.
Yeah.
And I mean that very specifically. You have a specific brain that is shape-shifted as well, based off your environment, based off what you've gone through, based off your attachment, based off your personality, all these things. And those all make you vulnerable. And your vulnerabilities aren't a bad thing.
Yeah, being vulnerable is okay, but it has to be with the right person who's not going to exploit it.
And that's the thing that I think when you live your life thinking, well, I would never do this to someone. Right. Why would anyone do that to me? Yeah. And that's, I don't want to say that's dumb, but I don't know. Like you can't.
It's innocent, and there's a beauty in that innocence. But we have to realize. And I listen to a fuck ton of true crime, so I realize how dark humanity is. But at the same time, regardless of how much true crime I listen to, if I find myself being single, I mean, maybe I'm older, maybe it wouldn't be the case. But yeah, if I were in my 20s, like the amount of shit that I allowed men to like throw at me.
Well, and think of that when it was just going to a bar and meeting up with someone. Yeah. When you went to a bar, you saw the creepy guy in the corner who was trying to like
out with that guy. Yeah.
No, you didn't.
Sometimes.
Oh, man.
I had to get cocaine somehow. I'm kidding. Kind of.
But now that creepy guy is 10 different photos of a hot guy.
That's right.
And he is just out to get his rocks off, maybe. Right. Maybe he's out to actually be manipulative. Maybe he's out to murder you. Maybe he's out to scam you. Yeah. And just be smart. Yeah. Have friends. Have friends who know you and love you. Yes. Have community. Have faith in yourself. Have faith that you can want and need, and it doesn't have to be reliant on another person filling that puzzle piece. Yes. And I laugh as I say that because probably if I met someone tomorrow, I'd do all this shit all over again.
I will not allow that.
But my friends won't allow me, and I'll it's not that you can't do this. Yeah. Just notice it. Yeah. Be aware of it. Smart, be reflective.
Be measured.
Yes.
You know, don't jump into anything too quickly. And most importantly, go with your gut. Like if something feels off, explore that.
Yeah.
And more importantly, just go with it.
Yeah.
You know, like our gut, I think I've said this in other episodes that we've recorded and may not release first, but your gut won't steer you wrong.
No.
It's an evolutionary device that is there to keep us safe.
Yeah.
And so listen to that. So, you know, I will end this. A couple of other good examples of kind of catfishy stuff, more like just kind of shady stuff, but the Tinder swindler, that was brilliant because that not only was a guy being duplicitous and scamming people for financial gain, but it was also, my interpretation is women being kind of seduced by what they perceive to be this like lavish, incredible life. And they're like, oh, I've been on his private plane or whatever. Like I've traveled internationally with him. Like he must actually need this money for one of these crazy like reasons that sounds like something out of a Bourne movie, you know, like ridiculous. But check that one out too. I thought it was a really good example kind of what we're talking about, that also relied on like Instagram and the internet and just this dude creating this persona of himself where he's this multi-millionaire and just like luring women into this and then swindling them out of vast sums of money.
See, that's where I want to say I would draw the line.
Yeah, I would.
Is that if someone asked me for money, one, because I don't have any.
Right. That's very true.
But even if I did, I'm not giving you my money.
These women were like taking out loans and shit.
Oh, man.
Watch the Tinder swindler. I thought it was fascinating. And also Bad Vegan. Slightly different because they had a legitimate face-to-face relationship, but it was a scam nonetheless where, you know, like this guy was like, I can magically tell who the good people and the bad people are. And I'm going to make me and you and your dog immortal. I just need 1.7 million fucking dollars to do it first. You know, that kind of stuff. Fascinating. There are tons of examples out there.
And it's good to watch this stuff.
Cautionary.
Because, it's good to watch this stuff because you will, the more you see this and the more you think about it and reflect, what would I do?
Yeah.
It's almost like prepping yourself for like an earthquake drill. Right. Practice.
Yeah.
Practice. Give yourself an opportunity to see where your brain might have been like, that's weird. What? And that's always the arc that you hear as someone being like, yeah, I thought that was kind of weird, but we make excuses.
But also seeing it as like a secondary person.
Yes.
And not being immersed in it. I think it's far easier to see all the red flags.
Always.
Like when you're telling me about this guy, Henry Hill, and I'm like, oh, this doesn't sound right for X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And you're like, oh, yeah. Sometimes you need somebody to point that out.
And I wasn't seeing things at that point.
And even still, so often we hear with situations like this, a friend will point out these discrepancies and these oddities, and the person who's being catfished will be like, no, you're wrong.
Well, you don't understand him, Jen. Yeah. It's really hard working on the railroad all the live long day. Come on.
His back hurts at the end of the day.
That's why he couldn't go out and he needed to get a haircut because it was
his hair.
His engineer hat.
His engineer hat.
Fucking in the kitchen with Dinah.
Oh my God. All right.
So, but yeah, no, and I think that's how often too a lot of females end up losing their friends over guys too, where it's like, well, you don't know. Right. And then they isolate you.
Right.
So,
yep. And that's another episode where we'll talk about like narcissistic personality disorder and the isolating stuff. So yeah, we've got scores and scores of stories of catfishing and bad dating.
We've done some dumb shit.
We really have.
And live to tell about it. Thank God.
I know. We're very fortunate. And, you know, part of what we're doing here is it's cautionary stuff too. Like we want to look out for our sisters.
Yes.
And we know.
And brothers.
Yeah, brothers. We know how dirty it is out there.
Yeah.
And we know how absolutely terrible people can be. And I've got an almost 5-year-old, and I worry constantly. I'm like, oh God, what kind of scheme and what kind of crazy drugs are going to be out there when he's, of age? Yeah, it's frightening.
Yeah.
And so if we can, in addition to entertaining you, also tell you some cautionary shit that makes you a little more guarded, a little less trusting, and just a little more cautious.
Yeah.
We're all about that message. So yeah, that was catfishing.
Cool.
We will, in a later episode, enlighten you on the dangers of online dating. We'll talk more about kind of elaborate catfishing schemes that we didn't even until last week knew existed. It's insane. So stick with us, hang in there. Our editing is kind of the shits right now, but that's the deal. My husband is our producer and our editor who is teaching himself Adobe Audition. So yeah, hang in there for the content as opposed to the quality of that content. We love you all, and we will see you. Yeah, stay safe. Yeah, bye guys.
Bye.